Firstly, thank you all of you for sharing this video. I think now more and more friends are actually enjoying this video, and I have realized there are more and more are actually joining and eagerly waiting this thing. So I thank you all for sharing, and I also thank the YouTube for making it publicly available. With this remark, I welcome you for this 9th lecture where we try to find the plane wave solution of the Dirac equation. We proceed in a very similar way as what we did for the KG equation. In this part, we first derived the Dirac equation for the free particle, and being a free particle, it is represented by the plane wave. And we will also see that when you are actually applying the Dirac theory, Dirac equation, then how automatically through mathematics as a mathematical consequence you will find the concepts of spin. So that's the beauty of Dirac equation, and that's why I think this topic is very close to my heart, and I do feel that you will also enjoy. So welcome to this beautiful world of the Dirac theory. Welcome you all. So friends, welcome back to go further into the Dirac equation. In the last session, we derived two compact covariant form of the Dirac equation, and also we discussed the probability density of the Dirac equation. We have also derived properties of the Dirac matrices, and using those properties now we are able to actually derive the solution of the Dirac relativistic equation. And for that, again, since it is a free particle, so the wave function describing your particle will not be distorted due to any interaction, and therefore the wavefront representing your free particle will remain always plane. So with that concepts, we are now writing the plane wave solution for Dirac equation, relativistic Dirac equation. And therefore, I will first write my Dirac equation for a free particle. Don't forget, we have also discussed that it should be a vector function. So this is my psi vector function having 4 components that I will write. And on other side, this alpha, the Dirac matrix, and nebula, the space differential operator. And of course, we have a one rest mass energy term as well. So this is my equation which I need to solve. And don't forget the psi which we have taken, the psi RT, is basically a 4-component term. So psi 1, this instead of R and T, I can write the composite notation as X. X includes everything. So it is like psi 2, psi 3 and psi 4. So it's a 4-component vector that we can find. I'm a little impatient and I'm unable to control myself in telling that whenever state function is a vector function, if you just go back to the topic of our rotational algebra, then we have studied that whenever a wave function describing a particle behaves as a scalar, then under rotation algebra we can prove that the infinitesimally small generator for such a wave function is always the orbital angular quantum number. So if your function psi is a scalar function, then infinitesimally small generator of rotation is the orbital angular momentum. So the role of angular momentum is to produce rotation. Similarly, as a second case, we have discussed that if your psi is not a scalar but if it is a vector, then also the infinitesimally small rotation is produced by angular momentum.
But in that case, when the state function psi is a vector, it is not this orbital angular momentum, but it is something else having the effect same as to produce rotational effect. So we call it as the spin angular momentum operator. Though spin matrices, the Pauli matrices which we are familiar with, are of course, and unlike orbital angular momentum, do not depend on space and time coordinate. They are simply the numbers, but they are playing a role of the orbital angular momentum, and they produce the infinitesimally small rotation. And combinedly, adding this two, we get the total angular quantum number. So in fact, this is enough hint for us that whenever state function describing a particle is written as a vector quantity, then it automatically includes the spin angular momentum. So this is basically the outcome we are expecting from just as an observation of the rotation algebra and connecting it with this particular case of Dirac theory, that since even in the Dirac theory the state function is a vector quantity, so it should, it's our guts feeling, it's our inner feeling that it should also include the spin automatically. And indeed, towards the end of this topic, we'll see that the spin is indeed automatically emerges out as the mathematics, and this is the first time that through mathematics we are able to include the spin in our discussion. Otherwise, up till whatever experiments were performed in order to prove the spin or the spin angular momentum, they have included the concept of spin in a very ad hoc manner. But here we will prove that the spin automatically comes in with the theory itself. So this is the first hint we can get, that since our vector, since our state function is written as a vector, so we are expecting that the spin should come as a byproduct of this theory, and it comes as an automatic mathematical consequence. But there are books who actually sometimes they discuss this topic at the end, but as I said, I am little impatient and I have introduced it in the beginning, and that is what we are expecting from the Dirac theory, that spin should come as a consequence of mathematics. But anyway, today I think first we can write this, we try to solve this, and as we are expecting that since it's a free particle, so plane wave representation is possible. So I write now plane wave representing the Dirac free particle like that, correct? So this is my plane wave which I write. Again, I don't write the amplitude, but I write the different components as uj, and of course it has the phase part. Again, there is no need to write k dot r because it's a dot product, so eventually it is the radial component, r component, who contributes, and therefore I write as kr, and of course minus omega t. Here j will go as 1, 2, 3, 4, but please don't mix up with this j and our mu, because this j gives you only the 4 component 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not separating your space part and the time part, correct? So some may be slightly anxious to know that why instead of Greek letters you have used the Latin letters even to write the 4 components. But this is not the Minkowski space components 1, 2, 3, 4. They are just the 4 components of this psi 1, 2, 3, 4. Correct? So G runs as a 1, 2, 3, 4. And we also know that the P can be written as h cut k. It is related with the wave vector k. And your energy can also be written as h cut omega. So with this idea, now I put this here. Instead of this psi, I will write this information, and del by del t one time when occurs. So it is I and omega that will come out. Whereas here nebula, which is basically the space operator, so it works on the r part, so I and k will come out. So substituting this equation into the Dirac equation, what we get is like this. So I h cut, what comes out after differentiation is minus I omega, and of course this exponential term will be recovered back. Uj will be there, so I can write directly this psi j, correct? So, and I'm avoiding writing this RT every time, but you assume that it is everywhere. And then on right hand side also I do the same thing. I CH cut which was there, this alpha which is as it is, and when this nebula operates on this exponential term, this ik comes out. So I write that part ik, and of course that uj and again exponential term which we have obtained, which I can combine, so it will give me the psi j back, correct? And of course in the last term I will write beta m0 c square and that psi j term again, correct? Purposefully, in fact, I have written this psi j just to tell you that some may be thinking that now I can remove this psi j from both the sides. No, it is not possible in a sense, because this psi j also depends on its uj part. Uj, where if you put the different values of j, u1, u2, u3, u4 are in fact the functions. They are the components of this psi. And therefore, now basically this equation, after putting the expression for psi j, is giving you the 4 equation for u1, u2, u3 and u4. So basically this is your linear homogeneous equation, first order equation, but it is a simultaneous linear equations. It is the 4 simultaneous first order equation in terms of this u1, u2, u3, u4. So please don't be in hurry to remove this psi j throughout, but rather psi j, which we can write as a uj into exponential term, then exponential term can be cancelled out throughout, because it is only the face part that we can cancel out. And therefore now this equation I can write like this: I square minus 1 h cut omega, which I write as the energy. So this I can write E uj, correct? On the other side, I square and h cut k I can write as a p. So this term I can write simply as c alpha, and then you know that this p I can write so like this, and of course plus beta m0 c square term, which will be as it is, and then what you have is like this. So they are basically the 4 equations. Don't forget u1, u2, u3, u4. Here also u1, u2, u3, u4, and there is a dot product between two matrix representation of the operators. So basically it is the 4 simultaneous first order differential equations, where uj is something like u1, u2, u3, u4, 4 components. Just to make it short, what we do, this first half, upper half of this column vector u1, u2 I can denote by say v, for example, and this lower part of that I can denote by w, correct? So instead of this 4 components separately, I can write like this, where don't forget v I have assumed for the upper 2 part, that is u1, u2, and this w I reserved for the this u3 and u4. You can interchange also, there is no issue with it, correct? So basically this is the 4 simultaneous equation which we now try to solve in the next topic, on the next page. So I just substitute here and then we do some mathematics. In fact, this topic is involving little bit of simplification, so please be patient and try to find this. So this is what I do next. Yes, for alpha dot p, again we know that alpha, which is the Dirac matrix, that can be written something like 0 sigma sigma 0, but its component I can write as L, where L will go as a 1 2 3 or x y z, correct? So this notation I can use, and instead of p momentum vector I can write something like px, py, pz. So all this information I can now use here directly. So it is C, and then we have your 0 sigma L 0. This is your alpha, where L again goes as a 1 2 3 or x y z, dot p, and don't forget p means it is your x, px, py, pz, and then we have a second term, that is your m0 c square, correct? Or m0 c should come here, correct? So then m0 c square, and of course this beta we know it's again a 4 cross 4 unit matrix. So that unit matrix I write here. So it is the 1, 0, 0, minus 1. Correct? So this is my beta, and that operates on my V and W. Correct? So this is the Dirac equation only, and then we do some simplification. This when I operate, it will be C in a bracket, it will be 0 sigma dot P sigma dot P 0, and then this V and W, I separate out this term M0 C square, and when I do it here, what you will get, this 1 V and like that. So you do this, what you will get is V and W. So this is minus because of this minus unit matrix. Correct? So we have this E V W. Even if you want to write this E inside, no issue, you can write here also the EV EW. Correct? So basically by assuming your 4 components U into 2 part, at least in look wise we have converted into 2 components. In fact, it's the 4 only, but we can write like that. And then we now compare the element to element in this form. Then what we write, the first row, if I compare, then EV is equals to, here also I can do this calculation, 0 into V plus sigma dot P into W. So first element will be something like your C sigma dot P W, correct? And then here it will be your M0 C square V. Whereas if I consider the second row, then it will be EW is equals to this C sigma dot P, now V, and this is your M0 C square W. Right? So what I get if I just collect all V terms together, then I have a final equation that E minus M0 C square V is equal to C into sigma dot P W. No need to say, this suggests that these two equations are intermingle, that V and W and this W and C alpha dot P, sorry, sigma dot P V. So obviously, since there is a cross term, so in order to remove one of them, I can use the method of elimination. So what I do, first equation, this equation I multiplied by E plus M0 C square. So left side will be your E minus M0 C square, and then I multiply E plus M0 C square. Don't forget V. Same thing I do when on right side, sigma dot P W, and then what is multiplying is E plus M0 C square, and for this part, W into E0, E plus M0 C square, I can use left side, so it will be written as a C into sigma dot P V. So this term I can write as C into sigma dot P, which was already there. Another C sigma dot P comes, and then don't forget your V. Okay? So we have this equation, and this is the A minus B, A plus B, so A square minus B square way, and everything is now, you can see, in terms of V only. So I can eliminate the another function, and then if I combine all that, then what I have, E square minus this M0 square C raised to 4, that term when I bring on other side, let me write first here, then it will be C into C square rather, into sigma dot P whole square V. Correct? And then I can combine the term on the other side, but this I can bring on the left side, and then I will use the properties of this sigma and P. I just leave it to you to prove that if you apply sigma dot P, then you will find, and if you use the X component and X, Y, Z components of this Pauli matrix and Px, Py, Pz, then you can prove that this is Pz px minus ipy, and this term px plus ipy, and this is your pz. So this we can definitely prove with a simple exercise, that putting the different equations for the sigma x, sigma y, sigma z, and px, py, pz, we can prove that. And you can also prove this sigma dot p the whole square, which is coming on the right hand side, that you can prove simply as p square. So if this is your p square, and if I bring it on a say left hand side, and then obviously from all the terms I can take a v common, then what I'll have is your e square, or maybe I can take this on the other side, it would be easier to form our required equation. Then this c square p square plus m0 square c raised to 4, and obviously this v I can cancel out. Then what I get is the energy eigenvalue of Dirac free particle. So this is the expression for energy eigenvalue for a Dirac equation. And no need to say, this again admits or allows you to plus or minus. So this energy, if I write, then this energy can be plus or minus, where E, when I write as a square root of it, it will be plus or minus, correct? So this is something interesting, that whenever we are solving the relativistic free particle energy eigenvalue problem, either using Kg equation or even using the Dirac equation, our energy appears positive and negative. So now this is enough hint, this is enough proof for us to say that relativistically energy of a free particle can be plus or minus. Up till only with the Kg equation we were not sure, but even in the case of Dirac equation, when we receive the positive and negative energy both, so we are now confirmed that the relativistically free energy of a particle can be positive and negative. So I write that again, that energy of a particle can be plus or minus c square p square plus m0 square c raised to 4 raised to half. And therefore now we have the two possibilities, either E can be plus, let me write that solution as a E plus, and energy can be negative as well, that solution I write as a E minus. Then this both possibilities are allowed in relativistic quantum mechanics. Correct? So this is something interesting, unlike your ordinary non-relativistic case where the energy of a free particle can only be positive. What we have obtained that it can be negative as well, and it is allowed. So we now with a surety says that the energy can be plus or minus. Once we obtain the energy eigenvalue, the next aspect is to find the energy eigenfunction. And energy eigenfunction means basically we are looking for the expression for u1, u2, u3, u4, correct? And before we start, I think let's have a just that equation again, that in the expression of the energy, or in the expression of this eigenfunction v and w, then you know that there is a presence of Pauli matrix, and Pauli matrix is a 2 cross 2 matrix. So that indicates that if this is 2 cross 2 matrix, that means for each solution, for each eigenfunction v and w, we have a 2 possible solutions. So v has a 2 solutions, w also has a 2 solutions. In total, we have a 4 solutions as expected or as required, because your total state function psi is a 4 component, and corresponding to each component we have an eigenfunction and eigenvalues. So we are now trying to find what are the eigenfunctions. And as I've said that possibly we have both v and w have 2 solutions, 2 answers. So I start going with this equation, the last equation for this part. Let us say I try to solve this equation where from this I will make my v subject or you may start with this also, but I'm solving with this. So I now write the V as a subject and other terms on other side, and then I try to solve the equation. So I'm writing that equation again. Say I'm trying to solve for the V part. C sigma dot P, that W, and of course that another term which I bring from left hand side will make the denominator like this. So my V is like this, and then I have two choices. Either I can use this as a solution here, instead of E I can write E plus, or I can use this. But to find which is allowed, which is permissible, let me consider the non-relativistic case. Right? Whenever we have a non-relativistic case, that is your P is very small. For non-relativistic, your momentum is very small. And if momentum is small, so P square term is very small compared to the rest mass energy. So if particle is not moving very fast or not moving with a relativistic high speed, its linear momentum will be small or practically zero compared to the rest mass energy. In that case, your E plus will go to this part, C square P square. If I ignore, then M0 is raised to 4 raised to half. So it goes as M0 C square, but with plus sign, whereas this E minus goes as minus M0 C square. So the difference is that in the non-relativistic region where the linear momentum is practically zero, then this E plus solution has limit M0 C square, whereas E minus has a limit minus M0 C square. So if I use, say, E plus here, for example, and then if I consider what will be the V when your P is very small, then you can see it will go as infinite, because the denominator will be practically zero, because P tends to zero, E plus will be M0. So this is diverging, and therefore this we do not consider. So the solution of V is permissible or admissible not with E plus sign. This is not allowed, and therefore the only solution which is permissible is with E minus, and therefore now I am obtaining the solution for V considering your energy as E minus. Right? And therefore now I can put my value in the next step, and I will solve it. If instead of starting with V, if you would have started with the solution of W, then no need to say with the similar discussion you can prove that the solution, allowed solution of the W will go not with the E minus, it would have gone with the plus sign of the energy. Correct? So the only thing which we should understand is this part. Correct? So for W, you would have started with this case, and then as I've said that we are looking for, say, the solution of this. So I am finding, say, the solution of this part. How we can find the solution for W? And for that I need to know what is V. And for V, we are making one assumption. This is just the assumption. So we start with the simplest possible representation of V. Don't forget, this V and W comes from the representation of U1, U2, U3, U4. This upper half we have written as a V, and lower half we have written as W. So this V, which is U1, U2, I think as 1, 0 as a one choice, or you may write V as 0, 1. As I say, it is quite arbitrary. There is no physics or the logic behind it, but I take V equals to 1, 0 because then my simplification will be very easy. Okay? So in the next step here, instead of V, I will write 1, 0 first time, and in the second time I will write V is equal to 0, 1. Don't forget, W has a 2 solutions, V also has a 2 solutions. So these are the 2 possibilities for V, for which now I am finding W. If you have taken V something different, then accordingly you would have obtained the different solutions for W. So it is this choice of V will give me a specific choice of W. If you take some another form for V, then you can end up with the another solutions for the W. But in any case, you will get the totally 4 solutions, 2 for V, and based on this V's, you have 2 solutions for the W. So I retain this as my 2 choices for the solution V, the wave function V, U1, U2, that I can write like this, and then I'm seeking what is the solution for W. So basically now I'm writing now solution for W, assuming my V is 1, 0 in the first case, and in the second case I will put V equals to 0, 1. At the same time, I think I have already assigned you to do that what is the expression for sigma dot P. If you just recollect, then I have mentioned that this sigma dot P can be written as Pz, Px minus Ipy, Px plus Ipy, and Pz. So this, I think it's a very simple exercise. You can do sigma dot P means it will give you something like sigma x Px plus sigma y Py plus sigma z Pz. And for sigma x, again you can write your Pauli matrix 0, 1, 1, 0. And for sigma y you write the 0 minus 0 I minus I 0, and for sigma z you write 1, 0, 0 minus 1, and all you do and then simply add all 3 components, you get this. So it's just a very simple exercise you can prove. So sigma dot P is already known to me. So here in this expression, sigma dot P I will write like this. See, this is a common denominator. In the first case I will write V is equals to 1, 0. So exactly what I get I am writing. So as a first choice for W, when your V is 1, 0, that expression I am writing explicitly. This E plus M0 C square will be as it is. This sigma dot P, as we already obtained, I am writing Pz, Px minus I Py, Px plus I Py, Pz, and don't forget your 1, 0. For a second case, I will write 1 instead of 1, 0, 0, 1. This Px minus Ipy, Px plus Ipy, sometimes also written as P minus, and this we may write as P plus. Basically, they form the ladder operators, like annihilation and the creation operators. So like for angular momentum, we have created the ladder operators. With position also we have created the ladder operators. Here for this linear momentum, we write this as a P minus and P plus. Basically they are non-Hermitian operators. You can see if you find the dagger of this, the sign will change. So obviously it is not the Hermitian, and therefore we can write like that. So now when I just open up this, do the matrix multiplication, this into this plus this into this, and then for second row I can write like this. So when I do and simplify this, what I get is this small equation. First element of this W will be Cpz, and of course in both the denominator will be same as E plus M0 C square. This is the first element, and the second element will be C, and this I will call as a P plus, so it will be like this. My first element of W is ready. There is no need to do the exercise separately, because instead of this 1, 0 as a V, if I would have written 0, 1, then with a similar mathematics, I would get the second possible solution for the W. So let me write that directly. So for a second case, this is for 1, 0. Now if I go with the 0, 1, then the second possibility for W that I get is C P minus, again denominator will be same, E plus M0 C square, and the second element which we will write as minus C Pz in the denominator, E plus M0 C square. This is the 4 solutions now possible. V is 1, 0, correct? Then W is this and this, correct? So everything which we have obtained that I can summarize in terms of this. So my U1, first possibility, don't forget, which I have written as the, let me write a 1 here, otherwise we may confuse with this part. Don't forget, I think it's a psi 1 only I should write. This uj which I am now writing, correct? So not this one, it's not this u1, u2, u3, u4, I am writing about this u1, but now just not to get mixed up with this subscript 1, 2, 3, 4, I am writing as a superscript. So this is my first case which I am writing, which is having made up of v and w. So I write, basically this is my v and w, and for vw, when I take v as a 1, 0, then w I have obtained, for 1, 0, w which I have obtained is like this, right? So my full solution, the first case, will look like this. So this is my Cpz upon E plus m0 c square, and its second component of w will be like this, E plus m0 c square. As against that, if I would have taken v as a 0, 1, not like this, then the w would have been like this. So this part I can write here, Cp minus, denominator though remains same. I am not writing the other two solutions, where instead of for v which we have taken 1, 0 and 0, 1, one can think for w as 1, 0 and 0, 1. So this two components corresponding to v that you can find. Correct? So basically now we have 4 choices for psi, or 4 choices for u. When v is 1, 0, accordingly w. When v is 0, 1, accordingly you have 2 values for w. If w is 1, 0, accordingly you have 2 choices for v. If you have w as a 0, 1, accordingly you have the choices for this. So basically what we get is the 4 solutions of Dirac wave function. Let us do now the discussion of what we are actually doing here. Correct? It is not just the derivation is only. We need to understand that, and therefore let me just consider this part again. So I go to the non-relativistic part. If you have a now non-relativistic limit, so obviously your p will be very small. It's very small quantity compared to the rest mass. And in that case, your E plus, we have just seen, will go as m0 c square. And E minus will go as a minus m0 c square. So in this limit, let us try to investigate what is the behavior of U1. If you consider non-relativistic case, P is small, so this quantity will be small. 1, 0 remains as it is, correct? And E plus goes as a m0 c square. So basically small quantity upon m0 c square, so it will be further large denominator. So practically this term will be 0. This term will be likewise 0. So in the non-relativistic case, your U1 will have only this 1, 0 component, and these two are practically 0, so I may write them as 0. Similarly, if you write for the U2, again this 0, 1 remains as it is, whereas this third and fourth element, they are practically 0. Likewise, you can also prove in the case of non-relativistic limit, this upper two part of U3 will be 0. U4 also have upper two part 0. Only this 1, 0 and 0, 1 remains. And therefore, can I say that whenever you have this V as a 1, 0 or 0, 1 or W as a 1, 0 or 0, 1, they are the dominating term. At a non-relativistic case, they are not changing. They remains as it is 1, 0. Whatever their contribution is in the relativistic domain, they contribute equally in the case of non-relativistic domain. So this 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1 or 1, 0, they are the components. They are unchanged. They are not at all changing their value even when you go to the non-relativistic domain. And therefore, they are unchanged component. We call them as the large component. Whereas this component, who are almost 0 when you consider the non-relativistic case, when your P is very small, so they are known as a small component. Right? So in the case of U1 and U2, it is this upper components are the large component, whereas in the case of U3 and U4, it is this lower components who are the large components. Right? So this is the one name we can give to this 1, 0 component as a large component and the other component as the small component. Another property, if we just look at to this, and in fact this was the reason, though I did not disclose in the beginning, that this V, which we have taken as 1, 0 or 0, 1, it's something similar to your spin wave function of the Pauli. We know that in the Pauli discussion for the spin, at that time the symbol which we have used is like alpha, that is something like your 1, 0, and beta we have taken as a 0, 1. So this is your Pauli spin wave function. So basically this 0, 1 and 1, 0 are nothing but the Pauli wave function, correct? And therefore this U1, U2, U3, U4 who contains this Pauli wave function, we call them as the spinor. And 1, 0 is something like your spin up, where 0, 1 means it is spin down. So basically U1 is your spin up wave function, U2 is like a spin down wave function in the non-relativistic case, U3 is again a spin up wave function, and U4 which is 0, 1, so it is like a spin down wave function, correct? So this is the Dirac solution where we are able to produce your U1, U2, U3, U4, all 4 components. And once we have all 4 components of U, then multiplying it by the phase factor and this amplitude part, we are able to construct the plane wave representing your particle. So this derivation, apart from this physics involved in it, actually gives you the importance of the Dirac equation. Based on that, when we try to understand the concepts of positive and negative energy, that is the very interesting we try to understand. Okay? As I have also mentioned in the beginning, that it is the property of this 4-vector representation of a state vector. It is this particular property that your state function is always it's like a vector. Then you know that this vector property itself telling you about the spin. And at the end we are actually coming across such a situation that your state function U1, U2, U3, U4 has component of Pauli's spin wave function. So spin comes in a very automatic way in this discussion. Second aspect which we will discuss in the next part is that both Kg equation and the Dirac equation allows the positive and negative energy. So positive energy and negative energy of a free particle, that we try to understand. So combining with the concepts of spin, as we have already get a hint. Our intuition now says that spin should be there. Even in our expression for the state function, spin comes in. So obviously with the idea of this spin, and we try to understand what is the physical significance of the negative energy. So in the next part, we try to understand the negative energy and its interpretation that was given by the Dirac. Dirac had given a very brilliant understanding of it, which has in fact evolved as the new concept, new theory in the case of relativity. So that aspect, that part, we will discuss in the next part. So I stop here for a while, and in the next part we try to give the physical understanding and interpretation of the negative energy due to Dirac. Thank you.
Friends, it's a little lengthy topic covering around 40 minutes, but the mathematics is beautiful, and we have derived Dirac equation and its solution using the plane wave. And what we actually realized that being alpha and beta Dirac matrices, being a 4x4 matrices, the 4 components state function can be deduced for a free particle. And we have also seen that as the simplest representation of this 4 components, if we take as a part of it the Pauli wave function in it, which is represented by the spin up and spin down wave functions like alpha 1 0 or beta 0 1, then automatically all those 4 components for a state function can be deduced. So this is in a way is the mathematical framework which allows from the inception, from the beginning, the concepts of spin into the description. And that's what we have realized, that unlike the experimental physicists who have, in order to explain certain experiments, added the spin in the ad hoc manner, here I think through mathematics, and people say that mathematics never lies. So here you can see that the mathematics actually give rise to the concept of spin. And that's the benchmark of this Dirac theory, that how easily we can go beyond the relativistic, beyond the classical concepts, and applying the concepts of relativity and the quantum mechanics together, the concept of spin can be understood. So with this Dirac equation at our disposal, with the 4 components describing the state functions at hand, obviously in the next part we try to infer further when we allow the interactions to be the part of the theory. So that's part I think even more interesting, and I just tell you that you must attend those parts because it gives the real thrill and the physics of this. So thank you very much for attending this lecture, and you can again, I repeat, share, and if you like, you can subscribe, and of course make a comment. I think still I'm not receiving that much comment because I'm eagerly waiting to improve myself. Unless and until you raise the questions and queries, I am unable to improve. So for sake of my being, I request you to just make a comment on it, and you can also suggest some improving points. Thank you very much.